So, Mike, I'm with Mike, and Mike is a financial planner with Wells Faber, and we've known each other for a long time. And the reason we're on this call is that there are two things that struck up in conversation between the two of us that are big in people's minds. I mean, everything's big on people's minds at the moment.
Totally.
But I think, health, spirit, body, everything. But I think what I thought would be useful would be to take Mike's angle, Mike's area, which is finance, because that's a big concern for all of us. And then my area, which is really around relationships. I reckon if you get the money right and you got the relationships right for now, we don't know what's going to happen in the future, then at least we'll be doing some things right. And there's a lot of people who are not in a good space financially. And so the purpose of Mike coming on board is first to have a conversation and see what kind of tips and ideas we might have. So Mike, why don't you start by just giving your kind of view of how are you doing? What's your sense of where your clients are at? What's your sense of where the market's at without getting into too much detail or too heady on the subject? Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Simon. That's superb. Thanks for the opportunity.
Sure.
So I think, yes, of course, it is anxiety provoking. I don't think there's anybody that's immune to this in terms of the immensity of it or, what it triggers emotionally. So I just want to get that out the way. All the finance professionals and the investors out there, although we obviously are trying to hold a confident line with our clients, and we are doing that, underlying that is a sense of concern and anxiety. But one thing as a financial advisor or an investment specialist that you constantly train to do over time is to try and manage your emotional response in good times and in bad times, because emotions are what effectively drive poor decision making, and you need to think of things in terms of clarity. So I think that's what we're trying to bring here. And so, yes, I've been feeling it. A lot of concern about people that are struggling from a cash flow perspective. So if there's too much debt or they've cut their income's been cut, that's a major concern. Fortunately, the financial planning business is not such that that's a reality in terms of income. So that hasn't been a concern for me, but it's been concerning dealing with clients and people that are in those situations. And in terms of the lockdown, I must say, other than what's going on outside, I quite enjoy the fact that we're all being kicked onto the internet, into the digital world. I think it's long overdue. It's going to make our lives fantastic. There's going to be a lot of positivity around, a lot of change. It's good for the earth. And I'm loving the peace and quiet of the world. So that's how I am at the moment.
Great. Thanks, Mike. Thanks for that check-in. So what I'd like to do is get in the shoes of, I don't know who your typical clients are, but I'm thinking particularly the people who are going to be most likely to be listening to this. So from a demographic perspective, probably I would imagine kind of LSM. What does LSM stand for? Do you know?
Their lifestyle, where they are in the income bracket, their lifestyle sort of bracket.
Yeah, so I would imagine more or less like LSM 6 to 8, something like that, I would imagine.
Okay.
So people like you and I, people who have an internet connection, people who have a safe roof over their head, they can go get the groceries and so on and so forth. It's not to say that we're neglecting the others, but just that's the reality of who's going to be tuning into this right now.
100%. Yeah.
So Mike, what would you say would be, I'm trying to think of a scenario of someone who, for example, we spoke earlier, and I'm sure you got a couple of examples in mind, but someone who, for example, might have been self-employed, had a business that was, they're running a cafe, they're running a small IT business or something. But I think particularly kind of customer-facing business like mine, actually, who suddenly has had the experience of having the rug pulled away from them and income has kind of dried up. That's the person I would quite like to speak to in this and see what kind of ideas and suggestions you might have for them. And we might even come up with some other ones on this particular call. But any thoughts or words on that?
Okay, so look at the average person in that position. Self-employed people are typically aren't the biggest savers. It obviously depends where you are on that curve, but having kids at schools, paying off mortgages out of a self-employed situation is tough for most people, is the reality of it, let alone putting 15% of your salary away into pension funds and that type of thing. I mean, that is the stark reality. If not everybody knows what everybody else is doing, but as a financial advisor, I'm in the position where I speak to a lot of people, and it's self-employed people struggle. Yeah. So if we're talking about that specific sector of your listeners, then the key things are going to be, there's going to be the emotion of hope, i.e. this is going to be a 3-week lockdown. It's going to be business as usual in 4 to 6 weeks. Certainly by May, June, we're going to be back into the swing of things. And they're asking themselves, can I survive that? And what do I have to do to survive that? So obviously, I'm not a business advisor, but obviously you've got to try and pivot your business and start earning an income a different way. But that's not my area of expertise. And, you know, you've seen the fitness community get online and that type of thing. So that's one type of thing. But the point is, you've got to look at it and you've got to be decisive. That is the key word here, is you've got to be decisive. Hope is not going to help you in 6 weeks' time if things haven't changed. So really, you've got to take a cold, hard look at your numbers. What are you earning now? And if this is a protracted situation, and protracted doesn't just necessarily mean a lockdown. Protracted could just mean you go into an economic depression. But if this is a protracted situation, you need to put yourself in the shoes of, in that scenario, and you need to make decisions accordingly. Because the wait and see philosophy is not going to work. It's better to be defensive now. And in the event that it's not a protracted situation, you can kind of, you can readapt then. But you want to react now as if it is a protracted situation. So what does that mean? So in the first instance is, if you've got debt, if you've got short-term debt and you can pay some of it off while you are earning an income, you know, credit card debt, that type of thing, you've got to try and get rid of that sort of debt. I'm not saying it's going to be possible or feasible, but if you're earning income and you can reduce that to some extent, you must. Banks aren't going to give you, I can't see banks giving you grace periods on short-term credit card debt and that type of thing. So I think that's going to be around whether you like it or not. If you've got a mortgage, there are things that you can do there. The banks are giving you grace periods to repay that mortgage, to not have to make your installments in the short term. But the reality is they're not going to give you those grace periods forever. You know, so they may do it for a month, they may do it for a month or two. But two things are going to be certain: you're going to have to repay that back, and they might charge you additional interest on the amount that you're deferring. So I think in the event that this is a short-term cash flow crunch, you definitely want to take advantage of that offer from the bank, but it might not be an offer that's going to assist you long term. So in that, and then obviously you've got your own expenses. Fortunately, we're not spending money on petrol and that type of thing at the moment. So you need to have a good hard look at your fixed expenses. I don't think you should be cutting things like medical aid, life insurance policies, those type of things, which manage another type of risk, but certainly any sort of discretionary spend, you know, any sort of stuff that you really don't absolutely need. I think you need to cut immediately and just get down to the bone and make sure that your expenses you're as lean as and sort of fit for business as possible during these times. I think those are the key things you've got to do. And then in terms of your business, and this is the brutal truth of the matter, you know, we all have people that we care about in our business. The employees have been dedicated to us, they've been loyal to us, etc. But at the end of the day, your business is your business and it keeps your family going. And to the extent that you can keep everybody on board on reduced salaries or different terms, or they go for some leave or unpaid leave or temporarily you let them go, that's cool. But within your business, you've also got to look to reduce your expenses. And unfortunately, that does mean looking forward, and it does mean reducing your outgoings, and it does mean potentially retrenching staff and letting people go. And perhaps you have to start taking some stuff on board. You know, if you've got an accountant and you can do it yourself, maybe you need to do it yourself. If you've got an office cleaner, maybe you need to do it yourself. Maybe this circumstance will mean you don't actually need an office anymore. So perhaps you can reduce that expense. So really, you've just got to review everything, but I would suggest reviewing it now. Review it this weekend and be decisive. Get your business and your home as lean as possible. Take advantage of all the relief that's being given to you and act fast.
And don't panic.
No, don't panic. It is what it is, and don't beat yourself up about it. Unfortunately, I have spoken to a few people because I offered to help people in these circumstances just as a sounding board. I'm a financial advisor. I don't deal with crises every day, but I'm here I want to help anybody that's willing that needs help, and so there's some pragmatic steps that you have to take, and things like negotiate. So those are people with mortgages. If you're a renter, if you're renting, you're going to have to go and deal with your landlord. The reality is your landlord may have paid for that house that you own, and he's not going to take that much strain if your rent goes from 14 grand to 10 grand. The reality is he may have a mortgage, and he may be going to go and get relief from the banks, and you're entitled in a sense to go and share some of that relief with him. The point is he's not going to get another tenant this week or this month or maybe even next month. Yeah. So don't wait. Go and have the conversation with your landlord and do your numbers and say, listen, I'm paying 15 grand at the moment. If I can reduce this to 10 for the next 3 months, I can survive. Can we share the pain? And as tough as they want to be, it's a negotiation. So you do have to be, just try not be emotional, just try and be matter of fact and go and execute your plan.
Brilliant. I think that's absolutely fantastic advice. And the word decisive, Mike, is on the money. The word, oh my word. And it's I remember hearing a story of a wise and wealthy man, who said around decisions, he said, I make decisions. So I have an opportunity, I'll see it, I'll make the decision. It'll be right, it'll be wrong, I'll move on. And his observation was that what many people do is they pontificate and wonder and procrastinate about the decision. Maybe they eventually do make the decision, and then they regret or question having made the decision. And you're actually speaking into my favorite word of all, which is courage. Because actually, that's what it takes, right? Is the courage to actually pick up the phone and do it now, because it's not going to get any easier, is it?
Absolutely. And I think the other thing, just, you've got to think about the way we are as human beings. In 6 weeks' time or 2 months' time, you may have taken some pretty radical steps. And in 6 weeks' time and 2 months' time, things might actually be okay. And you're going to sit there and you're going to say, oh God, I overreacted. It was what was I thinking? That guy Mike Moore on Simon's podcast made me panic. But, the reality is it worked out, and you didn't have to take those drastic steps. So, you can't look back with this. You've just got to act and live with your decision.
Yeah, fantastic, Mike. And we must do this again, but I have one last question, which is around people who are not in that good a position that you mentioned. So, for example, what if there are people who, I'm a small business person, and I'd love the idea that I've got 6 months, a year of cash reserves saved up, but the reality is, the reality is I'm doing kind of, I'm doing what I can. I'm now, as a result of this crisis, I've now pivoted and I'm putting my stuff online like a lot of people are. But there's a lag factor, and I've been able to, I've been very privileged that I've been able to call in a loan, which has been just given me 3 months grace where I can breathe and then kind of get it built up again. But what if you can't do that? And the phrase that pops into my mind is treasure hunting.
Yeah.
And treasure hunting is looking in policies, looking in old emails. Totally. What can you sell? What can you get rid of? What can you be innovative about? What can you trade?
Absolutely.
Anything to say about that?
That's interesting. Look, it's funny. A lot of people, when they first come to you with the fund, say, God, they just chuck a whole lot of paper at you. Yes. And they actually have 10 grand in this policy and 15 grand there and 2 grand there. It's to be honest with you, I haven't even thought of it myself.
Oh, wow,
but
great. That
exactly could be a source of a couple of months worth of income. The idea is we never want to cash in any of our investments, but the reality is cash flow is critical. You can't let the ship go down. You've got to fight for survival. Absolutely. So indeed, go and scratch around in your drawers. Go and find out. Maybe it is a time to just sort that stuff out. So that is one good idea. Another thing is, if you do contribute to a thing like a retirement annuity, obviously the received wisdom is now things are cheap, so you must carry on making your monthly payments. But listen, the first thing you've got to do is put food on the table. So you can stop a retirement annuity contribution. So just call up your advisor or go online if it's with an Allen Gray or something and pause it for 3 months or 2 months and keep that couple of grand that
Brilliant.
you're putting into your retirement annuity aside. But what I did say is those things like life policies and medical aid, those type of things, or managing another type of risk, and you really shouldn't be adjusting those. What else can you do from a treasure hunting perspective? Sheesh, you got me on the hop.
No, well, I mean, I thought about it the other day. You know, it's so interesting. We have these fixed beliefs. You know, we say, oh, you know, I've got no money, like, and then you go, well, hang on a minute, like, is that true? And I fall victim to it so often. You know, my own blindness. We were talking before about books, by the way, just as a little resource. I was talking about for me, the go-to book about relationships, and I asked you what was your go-to book about money. And your one on money was Daniel Kahneman's Thinking Fast and Slow. And one of the things that I quoted to you from the book was, we are blind and we are blind to our blindness. I mean,
completely.
Wow.
Brilliant.
So I was going, oh, and then went, hang on a minute, like, but I've got that little savings piece and I've got that little savings piece. I've also got a retirement annuity. I know that lapsed a few years ago, but I've also, it's like, suddenly I went from this to this. And then just, by the way, the other book on relationships, which has been an absolute godsend for me, is Love Yourself, and It Doesn't Matter Who You Marry. Because the whole idea that, you know, and now we're in confined spaces together, you know, like, and we've got to actually deal with these things, and it's a relationship with ourselves. That's a little bit on that. So,
that's fantastic.
Yeah.
So treasure hunting, I don't know, you know, I think I always say to people, you know, listen, it's hard to go and, I can't think of any other ways of scratching around and finding a couple of grand here and a couple of grand there, to be honest. Maybe raid the kids' piggy bank, you know. But I'm
looking at that stuff on your shelf behind, Mike, and I'm wondering, like, what's all that there?
No, that's it. You can flog all of this. You probably get about 13 Rand 25 for that lot. It'll get you some dog pellets. But I mean, there are a lot of things you can do. If you certainly think about moving out your house and renting it out and moving to a smaller property, or getting somebody into one of the spare rooms from Airbnb, I mean, your home is actually can generate a lot. It's a holy grail. Nobody wants to do it. But the point is, if you need money, you can utilize it, you know, it's available.
That lovely phrase, everything is figure outable. And we are so resourceful.
Completely.
We forget that.
Completely.
Fantastic, Mike. Well, look, this has been a really great chat. Let's do it again. I've noticed,
Absolutely.
you know, I've got such a good connection with you, and it's such juicy stuff is starting to come out. We could go on for a long time, but let's honor what we said and just keep it a kind of TED Talk length. And then let's have another go.
Catch again. Thanks, Simon. Really appreciate it. Good luck out there.
Man. Yeah. Thanks, Mike. Cheers.
Ciao. Bye.